Hey, welcome back to Spilling Some Damn Tea. I am Joe Dove, and of course, with me in this fray, ready to give all the tea in all the right places.
There you go.
David A. Woo!
Woo! Hey, Joe. How are you tonight? Are
I'm
you
good.
ready for some hot, hot, sticky tea?
I am ready for all the tea. Put all the leaves in the bag, and let's seep that baby dark. And I'm going to go and switch so that you have the con.
There we go. So, Joe,
Yes, sir.
I feel like, we record these at night, right? So I figure, why don't we do a special edition of Comic Book Tea after dark?
Ooh.
And yeah,
tea.
and we are going to be talking about a comic book that was actually produced by a magazine. And that magazine is Penthouse Magazine, Joe. I don't know if you know this, but Penthouse actually had a comic book series.
I did not. I always was more about the about the models. I was always really into seeing where they came from, how they got there. That was my main attraction to these magazines when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, I was into this stuff was like way beyond my wheelhouse when I was younger. So I was into B movies and Skinemax. So that was my wheelhouse when it came to that. But Penthouse actually produced a comic book series that was called Penthouse Comix, first issue. There you go. So Joe, basically with Penthouse comic books, we have to go back to who ran Penthouse. And Penthouse was run by a man who actually started out. He was like the rival to Hugh Hefner, right? And he was actually, unlike Hugh Hefner, unlike Larry Flint, he was not a businessman. He was an artist. He was a photographer, and his name was Bob Guccione.
Oh my God, he looks like a 70s scumbag porn guy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, he's a 70s artist, like photographer. That's how he started out.
You take off your top. Take off your top. Let's want to see the boobies. It's better if I see the boobies. You know, like that's what I'm getting from him. And he's doing the.
Yeah. Well, the three big ones were Playboy and Penthouse and Hustler, right? Those are the three big ones. And Playboy was run by Geek. Hustler was run by a skeezy kind of guy who was anti-establishment. And Penthouse was run by an artist, a photographer, an illustrator. And that was who he was. And he started the magazine back in the 70s. And it was a huge hit, right? So he was making so much freaking money, hand over fist. So much that he would kind of throw money out there on a whim. Right. So if somebody had an idea, he'd go like, yeah, let's do it. Fine. Let's do it. Like, let's do it. Let's throw the money and throw the money into it. Let's do this.
Get the more money. And then I get the boobies.
So he tried to do a movie called Caligula.
Oh, I know Caligula. I saw that movie.
Yep.
This is the Ring of Caesar.
There you go. He actually made the movie. He produced the movie, and that was his attempt to break into the Hollywood business. Failed miserably. Caligula miserably. Then he tried to make a casino and also an after-hours club, kind of like the Playboy clubs tried to do with Penthouse. Both failed miserably. He did a science magazine that did pretty well, but it just couldn't sustain itself. But he did do, he did do a lot of different kind of magazines that actually did really well. Penthouse, of course, was the best one that did. So at the time, he is from Europe. Obviously, right? So
no,
yeah. So he grew up in Europe, right? He grew up in, I believe it was Italy or some. I forgot exactly where he grew up, but he didn't grow up in the U.S. So in Europe, they had different types of views in comic books. They saw it as art. In Europe, they saw comic books as art, and there was a lot of erotic. They were erotic comic books. For example, this one is from an artist whose name is Milo Manara. So yeah, so that's Manara. So that's, like, as you can see, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. You could probably see this in a bookstore, and you would see it in bookstores and in newsstands, actually, of the comic book. But inside, and sometimes outside, you would see stuff like this. Erotic stuff was seen as art over there, right? Unlike in the U.S.
It's not vulgar. It's like,
oh, this is tame. No, dude, this is tame. I had to find something that was like risky, but you could put on YouTube that wouldn't get us demonetized. So, but yeah, There's some stuff that's kind of like, there's risque stuff or a little bit more, explicit. You would see genitalia. Comic books were way more respected in Europe than they were in the US. The US, they were still seen as like kid stuff, and it wasn't really seen as like anything that adults would buy, unlike in Japan or Europe. So Bob there, he was a big fan of these comics because that's what he grew up with, and he always was always wanting to push the envelope and kind of bring a European flair to the US market. Everything was going okay, and then suddenly met two men. One of these men name was Horatio Westfield. Here he is. There's a picture of him. We're one of the very few pictures I could find of the guy. He was an illustrator. He had a long history. His family was business people. That was Horatio. But the big guy, the guy that really kind of got the ball rolling, his name was George Caragoni.
Oh, wow. Right? George looks like Russell Crowe currently.
Yeah, exactly. This was George, right? And George was a nice guy. George actually started out in comic books. He started out working in Marvel Comics. He wrote comic books. They weren't like big comic books. Like he wrote at an imprint Marvel had called Star Comics, where they published He-Man and all the cartoon book. And he was the protege of a very famous and also controversial editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter, who's the guy who started Valiant. We talked about him in the first episode. Comic book team, and he was his protege. Like he was like his right hand man. Jim mentored him when Jim started Valiant. He flew from New York to, I believe it was California, to Jim's door and said, like, I want to work, Jim. I want to work for you, and I'll even work full time, and I'll do this on the side, and I'll be an editor and writer. And he wrote for Valiant. He wrote at the time Valiant was doing video game comics, and so he did Captain N, the Game Master. He did Super Mario Brothers. But George always wanted to do something bigger. He wanted to be just like his, mentor Jim, because Jim was a huge guy. Jim almost bought Marvel Comics at one point. That's how powerful Jim was. So he wanted to be like Jim. He tried a lot of different ventures that didn't really go anywhere. And one day he heard that a guy from Penthouse was a big comic book fan, and he always had businesses here and there. And so he went to him with Horatio, who he was friends with, and he said, "Hey, I want you this comic book called The Thunder Agents. I have the rights to this old comic book called The Thunder Agents. I want to do this. Would you be willing to do a comic book just for this comic book?" And George was like, I like the European comics. I like the things like that comic book from France. The one that they made the movie of. That adult one, the one that it's called. What is it called? What is it called? It is called Heavy Metal.
Oh, I loved Heavy Metal.
There you go. So he in
the middle of the night.
Yeah, Heavy Metal, the iconic adult comic book that was worldwide phenomenon, made one of the best animated movies ever. Really pushed the boundaries of things, and featured European comic book artists. So he was like, I want to do that. And so George was like, hey, Horatio, and George and Horatio were like, well, let's make a comic book imprint, and we'll call it Penthouse Comix. And it's the 90s. They started this in the 90s. And at the time, the 90s was like, man, people are making so much money off of comic books. It's going crazy. This is perfect time to get into comic books. Where it's 1993. We're going to get into this comic book field. And so they made the comic book. They made Penthouse Comix. Unfortunately, there was a couple things that they did not take into account. And nobody really could see this unless, you were Jim Shooter and other comic book creators that were getting fired for saying this. But yeah, you guys are inflating the comic books in the collector's market. This is going to blow. You guys are pushing it. This is going to blow. And just as they were releasing the comic book bubble started bursting.
Wow.
Right, so it's horrible time.
Damn you, Rob Liefeld.
There you go. Yeah. And so, but this was George's dream, right? He was the editor-in-chief of Penthouse Comix with Horatio. He got to pick any artist he wanted. He got to pick, he approached like artists that like were legends in both Europe and the US. One of them was a comic book artist that inspired a famous cartoon called He-Man, and that was
He-Man.
This is the artist, and that is Frank Frazetta.
Oh, I know Frank Frazetta.
Frank Frazetta, legendary illustrator.
He's got some cool stuff floating around there. Yeah.
He hired him. He hired other famous artists like Adam Hughes. He hired like a lot of different people. And people were jumping for joy to work for Penthouse Comix because Penthouse Comix, they paid more than a regular publisher like Marvel DC. So Marvel and DC's page rates at the time were $200 a page. Do you want to know how much a page rate was for Penthouse Comix, Joe? Do you want to guess at all?
How much was the other one? Marvel
Marvel and DC were pretty much around 150 to 200 a page.
$200 a page?
Yeah, in the 90s. Yeah.
Oh man, the 90s were a good time for money, man. Everything went to shit in 2021.
Yeah.
2001, excuse me, George Bush. Can I get one hint?
Yeah, sure. It's under 1,000.
Okay. 600.
800.
Wow.
800 a page. That's just penciling. That's not inking it. That's just bare pencils. Crazy. Was 800 a page. If inking was more on top of that, right? If you wrote it on top of that, it was like sometimes people were getting paid 10 grand per issue just for their stories, and their stories were like 8 pages or something like that, right? Because this is an anthology. This wasn't just like one story. It was multiple stories in a comic book, just like Heavy Metal. Yeah. So it was going great. George was, getting to pick all these artists he always wanted to work with. They actually, one of them, Adam Hughes, wrote, illustrated a story that he wrote called Captain Adventure. And I read it. It's actually a really funny book. And he was working with all these people he admired, these heroes. And he was one going like, hey, I'm hiring you. Hey, I'm hiring you. He was making like connections like crazy in the industry. People wanted to work with him. People wanted to talk to him. And then George got an expense account. Penthouse was known for giving their employees expense accounts, and big employees like him were getting big expense accounts. And then, well, he met a friend, and he was his friend was like, "You got an expense account, dude? Let's go party." And George was a straight-laced guy. Like, George never drank. George didn't, believe in premarital sex. Like, he was a very kind of straight-up button guy. And then a word got introduced into his world that changed everything forever, and that word was cocaine.
Oh no!
Yeah,
none of this shit to it. Well, what is the cocaine?
Yeah, the cocaine. So he got hooked, and he started behaving erratically. And a lot of it was basically, you're an editor of a magazine. You got people pulling you every which way but loose. He was obviously stressed. And then, he wanted to party, right? He wanted to be just like those big Penthouse editors that he heard about, right? So he wanted to go out and party. He wanted to go and live the life. And he started doing cocaine, and he started behaving a little weird. And suddenly he was buying a lot of stuff, like cars and like a lot of like guns and and expensive props and memorabilia and toys. Like, he was buying like all this stuff. And then like he would also give stuff to his friends, right? Then and his friends were always going like, "Hey, dude, like, why don't you chill? Like, let's relax. Let's go just hang out like we used to, like watch a game and stuff." And he was like, "No, man, I got to party, man. We're gonna party." And then like a lot of them were going like, "Hey, like, I know you got an expense account, you get paid really well, but this is like really kind of extreme stuff. Like, this is like a lot of money, right? Like, you're paying a lot." And he's like going like, "Life's good, baby," And but then like Horatio was one of the people that was going like, "Hey, dude, like, we gotta he's trying to rein him in, right? He's trying to rein him in and trying to keep him on the ground, because Horatio grew up in like in like the world of business, right? So I mean, it's not really confirmed. I can't say it, but I'm just in my assumption that he grew up with a completely different world. He probably saw stuff like this happen all the time. Yeah. So I'm sure that, he saw warning signs, right? And he was trying to win him in, and it was not working. And then one day, they released their second issue of Penthouse Comix. And when it hits Canada bans it because it has S&M. And at the time, Canada had a very big strict rule about censorship and about what gets marketed out there, and bondage and stuff was like a big no-no at that point. I don't believe that is like that anymore, but at the time, that's what it was. So George got pissed, and he decided, fuck these people. If they are getting offended over bondage, then I know they have a law against showing imagery of a certain party that lost World War II. And that's when he released this little cover. And that did not go well.
And it closed the industry.
So he did this on purpose to like fuck with them, because in his cocaine fueled mind was like, these guys are attacking free speech and also attacking me personally. So if they're gonna get all bent out of shape over bondage. Fuck you. I'm going to do this on top of that. Unfortunately, when you have cocaine, you don't make the best decisions, apparently.
Usually not.
He failed to realize that the comic book also got published in other countries other than Canada that had stricter rules that were there and were suffering directly during World War II. And they had an incredibly zero tolerance policy against showing imagery like this of a party they did not ever want to see ever again for the rest of eternity. So that caused a huge headache. And it was at this part of the story that George decided to fire Horatio. Oh. Right. So he kicked him out. Now, was it that Horatio said, you've crossed the line, you're going nuts? We don't know. We'll probably never know. Horatio doesn't really do interviews, so we don't really know what the deal is. I'm assuming that was a conversation that happened there. But yeah, Horatio was kicked out. And now George, the very little rails he had were gone, just completely gone. The thing is that at the time also, it became very apparent that this magazine was destined for failure because, yeah, European comics do really well and stuff, but there's a reason why European comics don't sell in the US. It's because the US is very strict about sex and about what gets marketed to children because they see comic books as children. So comic book stores were either refusing to carry it or were putting it behind a glass wall or were hiding it or were terrified to sell it. And if they sold one, like an issue, and they heard any kind of rumbling from any parent, they would like quickly just take it off the shelves. So that was really hurting it. Number two, this is a glossy, these comic books were magazines, right? And they were, and newsstands wouldn't carry them. Newsstands refused to carry these because they're, to them, in their eyes, was comic books. And, you know, you have a comic book that's showing TNA, unlike Image, at least Image has a decency to cover up the
movies.
Boobies,
boobies.
Very little bit of the boobie that would make it cross over into adults, but close enough. So they were okay with doing that, but they were not okay with Penthouse. The newsstands, that was another market, boom, gone. And Penthouse was surviving the newsstand market, right? So that's how Penthouse was sold. So that's another avenue revenue gone. So that's not good. Also, Penthouse was not doing well because Bob had those decisions he made where it's like, you know, let's make a casino, let's make Caligula, let's make all these things that you didn't think it through and you're just doing them. So then start to pile up because also VHS tapes are coming out and it's not like before where, like, you know, if you want to see a porn movie, you go to a theater in a trench coat and you watch in a theater, or your buddy has a bootleg or something like that, right? That doesn't happen anymore. Now everybody has VHS tapes. Now they can watch porn whenever they want. And also, there's a little thing on the horizon that people are talking about called the internet. So their market starts to shrink. And then on top of that, newsstands start going out of business. And then the little cherry on top that then that broke everything fell apart was when the bubble started to burst. Right? So comic books stores were closing like crazy. So all the comic book stores that would have carried their comic book are gone. And they're very left with very few. And the ones that are very few are terrified of pissing off religious groups or something like that would protest their store because they're barely hanging on by a thread. And once Horatio got kicked off, a lot of artists started going like, hey man, this guy's crazy. He fired this dude that I thought was a nice guy. And a lot of artists started jumping ship. So a lot of the people that he was hiring were people that were like, they were good, but not as good as like Frank Frazetta or Adam Hughes and something like that. Like the big stars were kind of jumping ship. It gets worse for George. He starts doing so much cocaine that he
burned his nose and it fell off.
He's working all nighters. He's working all night and then crashing during the day and just working all night and crashing during the day.
You know who does work all night and crash during the day? Similarly,
SNL?
No, serial killers.
Dude, seriously. Oh man, dude. Oh my God.
I had to pat myself in the back.
I did not expect that one.
No.
So he starts doing, so much coke that he's not sleeping because after you're pulling all-nighters and you're sleeping during the day, eventually cocaine makes you stop sleeping. So now he's like not sleeping enough and he's throwing tantrums and and his friends are going. The friends are trying to rein him in. They're really, really trying. It's really sad. They're really trying to like make interventions, but he's just not, not, not going with it, man. He's like, cursing them out. He's, just like refuses to talk to him sometimes. He disappears for days on end, but he's still giving out gifts to his friends, and he's still buying all these things. And people are going like, "Hey, something's not kosher here. Like something's going on." And then one day, Penthouse is starting to suffer financially, right? Mm-hmm. So when a magazine starts, focusing on financially, people come in to start cutting the fat and start seeing, what are you spending on this? And what are you spending on that? And like, can we like reduce this amount of spending? Could we do that? Is this guy's job viable? Right. And then they checked the books, and they were like,
as you do,
there are invoices that are 3 times for things that should be, there are 3 times what should be less than this. And there is work being done that being paid for that was never done of people that I don't know. And it was never proven. He was basically being accused of embezzlement. And one day, George goes to work. And when he goes to work, he's like, my key's not working. Why is my key not working to my office? And then he looks up and he sees, we've closed your office to look at the books because you're under investigation. Wow. Right. So George does not take it well. His friends, his family, they're incredibly worried for him. They can't find him. They're calling. They're trying to when they do get a hold of him, he brushes them off. He tries to get, they try to get him and stuff. And then George decides to go to Times Square. And he's listening to his tape deck of James Bond soundtracks. He was a big James Bond guy. He goes to a hotel, and he goes to the bellhop, and he says, hey, this hotel is really famous for being the tallest hotel in New York.
Oh, no.
Right? Is that true? And bellhop goes, yeah, it's the tallest one. It's 45 flights up. Yeah. And he goes like, okay, thanks. And George goes up 45 flights of stairs and puts his headset on the ground and then jumps off and lands on a buffet table in front of children and in front of tourists. Wow. And it's so traumatizing that they have to seek therapy for years. It's really rough. And that was the end of George.
The Four Seasons in Tribeca?
I believe so. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. It was at the time, it was the tallest one. It was 45 feet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I know there was another hotel that was very tall in Midtown that another artist committed suicide headfirst out of the window.
So unfortunately, that was the end of George, and the investigation was obviously dropped. The comic book, the magazine was not doing well anyway, so they closed it up. And that was all she wrote about Penthouse Comix until 2024, where they've announced they're going to be bringing it back. They're bringing back Penthouse Comix. Right?
Wow, really?
Yeah, they are. The Penthouse closed for a while. They closed their doors around 98, I believe, because they couldn't keep up with the internet. It was
it's the internet.
Yeah, it's the internet. You can't keep up with free TNA.
No.
So and now AI. And what's a shame is that Penthouse Comix actually did a lot of good things. It did push the boundaries. It made people realize hey, adult comics aren't just porn, they're art, just like in Europe. Europe's right. And a lot of people were introduced to famous European artists and became fans of it. And, it's a real shame that it ended in tragedy. But yeah, and that was the story of Penthouse Comix, Joe, and that is my tea for tonight.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some crazy tea, my friend.
It is some crazy tea.
A tea that ended up in death. That's the title of this episode.
And by the way, we're laughing because we're very uncomfortable. That's how when we laugh. So,
yeah, that's not because he's dead.
We're not stating. Yeah.
Or in this guy's case, ha ha ha. No. That was dark. I'm sorry.
That was way darker than I thought I was going to go. But no, we don't take any joy in talking about somebody. No. Yeah. It's just that when we're nervous, we get very. This is very exactly. Yeah. So
all right, yeah.
Now Lincoln though,
oh yeah, he took it to the back.
Yeah.
He gave new meaning to the word backshot. No. Dude, I don't know how you're going to top these. They keep getting crazier and crazier.
No. We have one coming up about a very famous comic book artist and writer coming up next. And the tea is so good that when I was doing research, sometimes what I'll do is I'll get some ideas from, ChatGPT or Google AI, just for the ideas around like, hey, what person has been in this controversy? And then I just kind of sets me down the rabbit hole, right? So this artist, I said, what kind of controversy does this person in? And, a couple things pop up, about 3 or 4 pop up. And then I go, wait a minute, I heard about something else that he did. And I click it again, and it's like 3 more, 4 more, 5 more, 6 more, 7 more. So this guy is going to be the well of content, my friend. Stay tuned for the next comic book tea. That's all I'm trying to say. All right.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so that you're alerted to when the tea drops, because we've got a lot to spill with you, my friends, and you're not going to want to miss a drop. It's going to be so much fun. And we're going to have merch for comic book tea coming out pretty soon, because you guys seem to enjoy the show so much. I think it's fitting that we do have merch, and you can buy that merch in the links below, because we're that cool. And it's because of you that we have these opportunities. And there might be some other merch that might not be comic book related below, but click on that and buy some of that stuff. It's good stuff. It helps you because it's stuff that you were probably Googling anyway. So,
and if you have some tea you want me to cover, just put it in the comments, because I'm always up for tea.
Yeah, we're always up for tea. And of course, over my good buddy's co-host's head is the official QR code for our Instagram. We're going to start putting little droplets of tea all over our Instagram, just right there for you. And we're excited to do that. Maybe some behind the scenes stuff or some of our conversations. All of that fun stuff is going to be available. And if you are so kind, you can become a member now of To Be Seen. Your membership includes a bunch of stuff that I have no idea how it works, but once I figure it out, you're going to get all of it, my friends. So think about becoming a member as we think about how to figure it out. Until next time, this is Joe Dub and David A. Woo!
See you guys. Bye.
You know,